Oilers, you got a great offense with Connor McDavid. So I have them sweeping them.
Yeah, well, I don't think you heard my point. The San Francisco Giants have 3 more in the 2010s than the Rangers have in their entire history. So, yeah.
It's hard to get back and to get back-to-back wins. And I don't see the Lightning doing it here, so I have them losing to the Hurricanes in 6.
We don't talk about the 2010s because the 2010s had the Astros. And if the Astros didn't happen, the Yankees would have won in 2017.
He was close to Frank Reich, and they want Frank Reich back, so that's what they got. It's their discount Frank Reich.
Kaprizov and the rest of this crew. Jordan Greenway, who doesn't get enough props. He definitely is somebody who needs to be mentioned more.
Hi, this is Julie Dobbs. You're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NBA Opinions of the Weekend. We talked about the trade deadline maybe not being that too crazy. And Austin, it surpassed that. It was shocking trades left and right. I think I did want to take a victory lap. I did say Anthony Davis would be traded, and I did get that correct.
That is true. There were some shocking trades that did not happen. Well, Giannis, I was kind of 50-50 on whether or not he was going to be traded. I did end up thinking that he would be, but I'm not shocked that he wasn't. The one that I am kind of shocked was not traded was Michael Porter Jr. I don't necessarily believe that he's the absolute. He does not fit the timeline that the Nets are currently trying to plan their team around, and because of his injury history, waiting too long for one of those other teams to give you the perfect deal, I don't think is ideal as an organization. So I was very shocked that he wasn't traded. I think that they should have traded him. Obviously, it doesn't kill them that they didn't. He's a great player, but again, with these injury concerns and the inconsistent play he's sometimes had in his Nuggets tenure, I would have thought that they would have tried to get as much as they could for him right now and just build purely for the future, especially after they released Cam Thomas.
Yeah, it is surprising given that, but I wasn't too surprised because they may want to hold on and build more value with Michael Porter Jr. and that could
That's a risky move though with how many injuries he's had in the past.
Yeah, but I could see them holding firm on their deadline and maybe he's moved in the offseason. I think what was surprising to me was Jared McCain being traded from the Sixers because he's a young player. I know he dealt with injuries, but I would say still promising. And you want to, if I'm the Sixers, you're doing well now, and I would keep your younger players as that could possibly be used for when you move off Embiid if you decide to do that.
Yeah, Embiid has played very impressively as of late, and I think they're trying to get as much out of him as they can right now. No one's going to want to take on that contract. It's going to be almost impossible to move off a guy who's getting paid as much as he is. I'm just going to flat out say that. So I think they're trying to go the other route and just build around him while they've played very impressively recently. I do think that it's surprising that Jared McCain got traded, but for a first-round pick, it's not the worst trade in the world. And while, again, it's not the greatest value, I think, that he's ever been at, they're definitely not selling him at the highest he's ever been. I don't think it's the worst trade ever. I do think that the Thunder won the trade, and I'm impressed with how little they kind of had to give up for him, but for the 76ers, it's not the worst trade in the world.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't, but I do think it's the Thunder win that trade and they get better with another young player, while the Sixers, it's okay. Yes, you're going to go get a different player to add with that first round pick, but I was surprised they moved off a young guy like that. You talked about Giannis not getting moved. The Warriors were a big team that wanted him, and I do think Kristaps Porzingis is a good player to get. Of course, he doesn't fill the Giannis role, but he fills a unique aspect where it didn't cost him as much as they moved off Jonathan Kuminga and lost Buddy Hield, but it was drastically less than what a Giannis trade would cost them.
True, but he's basically. Can he play?
I don't think you make that trade without knowing he can play. So I think they did that to kind of help them in the playoffs and next year.
Okay. I mean, he's out through the All-Star break, and there is still concern regarding everything that he's been dealing with. But I have some concerns regarding whether or not he'll be able to play.
Mm-hmm. But man, yeah, you can just keep going for more crazy trades because you have the Pacers making a massive trade for Zubac, which they did need a center. And I do think Zubac
The
provides.
Pacers are going to be extremely scary next year. Extremely.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to get. Now, here's the deal about that trade. Did you see how the first round pick for this year is protected?
Is it top? It's top 5, right? Or
No. It's protected 1 through 4 and then 10 through 30. So if the pick falls 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, the Clippers get the pick.
Okay.
But if it's 1 through 4 or 10 through 30, the Pacers get the pick. And if it doesn't go to the Clippers this year, they get a 2031 unprotected pick. They also sent a 2029 unprotected pick. So the Pacers are really banking on the fact that they get a top 4 pick this year. And if they get, let's say, the first pick and they take Darren Peterson, I mean, a lineup with Halliburton, Peterson. They also have Nembhard, who's played very well. They still have Nesmith. They have Pascal Siakam. They have TJ McConnell off the bench. They have Obi Toppin. They have Zubac now to fill their center role. Their roster next year, as long as they get a good pick and as long as Tyrese Halliburton comes back to a decent level of his prior self, they are one of my favorite teams in the East next year.
Yeah, it would be interesting, especially if they do get that top 4 pick. Because yes, they did trade someone like Benedict Mathurin, but if you get that top 4 pick, you get another young guy in an incredibly stacked draft. And I think another team that I'm very excited for, it is in the West, is the Timberwolves. They added Ayu Dosunmu from the Bulls, who I was surprised had a lot of basically a fire sale or sold a lot of promising players. I believe they ended up trading Kobe White to the Charlotte
Zubac.
Hornets. Yeah.
Not Zubac,
Vucevic, yeah.
Vucevic,
yeah, and then Ayo as well. So looking at the Timberwolves, I was concerned about that point guard position after Mike Conley as he continues to get up in age. And given the rules with signing a player, Conley was traded twice. So he ends up going back there. But for the future, I like that idea of Ayo Dosunmu and Anthony Edwards in that backcourt.
Yeah, that is very true. I do like that as well. I think that the way that the team is kind of organized is pretty good. And I think that them getting Mike Conley back will help as a leadership role. I think Mike Conley's minutes do go down. He'll play a little bit, but Iowa is definitely going to take some of that time on the court. I do think that another surprising trade for me was Jaren Jackson leaving, but not Ja Morant. I would have been not as surprised if Ja also got traded, but according to a lot of reports and reporters, Ja has negative value basically because of the way that he was arguing with the team, having injuries, and also what has happened with his suspensions. I think that there's a lot of teams that are a little bit wary of trying to get him on the roster, but he still has a bunch of talent, and I would be extremely intrigued to see him on a playoff team. But Jaren Jackson Jr. goes to Utah while Ja stays in Memphis. And Utah has now got 2 kind of like 7-footers almost. I don't think Jaren Jackson's actually 7 foot, but or I'm marking. I think they're both like 6'10", 6'11". I'll check that really quickly, but they're both outside shooting big men. Okay, Laurie's 7 foot. Is Jaren Jackson 7 foot? No, he's 6'10". Okay, so they have a 6'10" and 7'1" guy that both are outside shooting, kind of ball handling guys. Not the greatest defender in the world in Lauri Markkanen, but obviously a great defender in Jaren Jackson Jr. But neither of them are tremendous rebounders, which I find extremely interesting. And you got to think that if Jaren Jackson stays on this team a little bit, that he'll probably play power forward, and you'll have a roster that is extremely, extremely tall because you'll have Jaren Jackson at the 4, but Lauri Markkanen, who's basically 7 foot at the 3, and then Walker Kessler at center. So that creates a very tall front court that is, besides Walker Kessler, I mean, they all can shoot. So I'm very interested to see how this team, how they work together. Obviously, they're going to be tanking this season to try to get a top draft pick like every other team, but I don't know if I love it, but I'm interested in how the dynamic between two very, very tall shooters and ball handlers really materializes.
Yeah, I like it from a perspective of the Jazz getting a player, and it doesn't look like they're going to go trade or use them as a trade piece. They're trying to build something, and they're taking a risk with that super big lineup. Now, you 3 through 5 is pretty much set now. It's figuring out 1 and 2 for
Well,
them.
and Deontay George has been very good this year too,
Yeah.
so I think 1 is pretty set. It's really just getting a bench that's good, and then obviously a 2 guard.
So that is something. And looking at the Grizzlies, I am surprised Ja Morant didn't get traded, that he does have negative value. And the Grizzlies are a team that have really surprisingly just added a lot of first round picks in this past year with the Desmond Bane trade and now the Jaren Jackson trade.
Yeah, that's very true. And the Grizzlies build for the future while still having Ja on the roster.
Yeah. And then I think we haven't talked about the Anthony Davis trade. I was very curious with your reaction as a Wizards fan because I figured you would not be happy.
He's not on a contract for very long, right? So I'm at least intrigued, especially while you have Trae Young and Sarr. Both Sarr and AD are quote unquote centers that aren't best at the 5. You probably do play Davis at the 5 though and Sarr at the 4 because Davis is a solid rebounder, but they can interchange as seen fit. I'm intrigued. I with Keyshawn George, who's also pretty good. I want to see how it looks. Just you traded for all these guys. Let's just see what it looks like. The starting lineup next year will be Trae. I mean, the dream starting lineup next year is Trae Young, Darren Peterson, Keyshawn George, Sarr, and AD. Like, that's the dream starting 5 right there. Now, obviously, there are still some, like Bub Carrington, I do think is decent. Same thing. Will Riley has really come on. Vucevic is a good backup. And you have some other guys like Block Coulibaly, who's had ups and downs with the Wizards. But I don't love the trade, but I don't hate it. It's not the worst trade in the world because you already have Trae Young, you have Sarr, you have Keyshawn George. I think all 4 of those guys are very good as long as AD can stay healthy, which has always been a question mark in his career. But did you see that he's going to wear 23?
Oh, no, I did not.
So, yeah, he's going to wear the same number that Jordan did with the Wizards.
That's awesome.
But, look, I'm not excited about the trade, but I want to see what it looks like. I think that you have to see what it looks like, especially when you have Trae and Sarr and this roster. I don't think it's the greatest trade in the world. I do find it very funny that Luka was basically traded for cash considerations. I mean, that's really what happened. It basically turned into 3 picks, 3 firsts, and cash, and Max Christie.
Yeah, and I know people are starting to associate Cooper Flagg with that trade, but that was never the vision, which is my annoying thing. And I do feel Cooper Flagg has helped make that transition much easier. I think some people are like, hey, when are you going to come out? And I'm like, no. I do think a lot of people would be on my side more if Cooper Flagg wasn't on the Mavericks. But he does save a lot. And I think I was curious your reaction because for the Wizards, I was like, are they changing their tune just because they were getting Trae Young? But like you said, is something you have to see, and they didn't really give up that much. I
They did give
also
up 2 firsts, but
those also are firsts that probably aren't going to do like those aren't great firsts in my opinion.
yeah, they're not. They're not.
Yeah,
That's true. But there's
like
still 2 firsts, and I it really comes down to what picks do the Wizards get this year, and who do they add?
yeah, and another thing that I would say for the Wizards, Anthony Davis gives them a right now to pair with um Trae Young. But if I'm looking at an interesting player in the Wizards who are just trying to get better, Jaden Hardy is already under contract, and he's a guy that had promise early in his career. And that was something when I saw he was in that trade, I was like, okay, that is something to where he could be a good player. I don't think he's a starter, but he could be a solid player for the Wizards when they get good or a trade piece. So that was something to where they could use. And he's a guy that I just think needs time to develop and doesn't really fit with what the Mavericks want. And I don't think the Mavericks know what they want. I think this was an important trade for them because they finally get rid of Anthony Davis. And I say finally, even after a year, but that's just kind of the whole situation around it.
Yeah, I
Now
do
I
find
think
it funny. I saw a video that Kyrie and AD played 25 minutes together.
yeah. And I was thinking about that as just a trade and I was preparing for the video. I do think the Mavericks still have a GM opening. And I was surprised if you're going to trade AD, I think you trade Kyrie as well. Because I do think you kind of want to hit a reset button. And with the GM, I would look into getting someone completely brand new. Not familiar with the Mavericks at all to where they can develop the roster. Because if the Mavericks got very lucky, you have Cooper Flag, who is very good and offers a promising future. You do have 3 picks. I think you can get a better haul. I just think you need someone that has no connections to the Mavericks and is looking at just making the best team with Cooper Flag.
Yeah, yeah. That is probably the best move. And then we also didn't talk about the Harden trade. We'll do a whole are the Cavs contenders in our next video, so please check that out after this one if you haven't. But I do like the Cavs trade. I think that's probably the biggest trade, even though AD was the trade, probably the biggest name, quote unquote. But Harden is up there as well, former MVP winner. And I do think that is the trade of all the trades, even like Kobe White is a Hornet, which I do think does make the Hornets a little bit better even during their win streak. And obviously the Wizards are kind of buying, and obviously Jaren Jackson trade. There's a lot of different moves that I think were pretty big. Zubac obviously as well. But I think the one that moves the needle for any team the most is Harden to the Cavs.
Yes, I agree. And it's a trade that really just came out of nowhere with James Harden when he requested that trade, but it was kind of also the Clippers are like, we want to move you. And really shocking for the Clippers as they kind of move out pretty quickly. And because they were great last year and now this year struggled. Traded Zubac, Harden, but I do think Darius Garland is a great return for them and a great spot for him because he is a promising young player as he is still just 26 years old and has a lot of experience with the Cavaliers.
Yeah.
So
is there any other trade that stuck out to you?
The Pistons trading Jaden Ivey. I think it was something we talked about, like that has always been floated. Like, oh, the Pistons are going to get rid of Ivey. Ivey goes to Chicago.
They do get Kevin Huerter, who's decent.
Yeah. Yes. So that's kind of, I think, the Pistons going into a win now mode of like, okay, yes, we have a lot of promising players, but what fits us right now?
Yeah, that's fair. I do. So. It's a decent trade. Also, Ivey's not the best shooter in the world, and Huerter's a better shooter. I think that's why they make the trade. You need more shooters in the postseason. So,
yeah, I agree. I do think it's adding a guy, and especially with Cade Cunningham, who helps with shooters. Kevin Huerter is a great shooter to add. So that's all I have. I'll let you close this one out.
Yeah, is there any trade you missed or that we missed? Please let us know in the comments, and please catch us in our next video.